Marshall Peak, Chapter 5899. Something went wrong. Marshall Peak, from the moment the human race army first launched an attack on the no-return pass. They basically had maintained the frequency of battles at every 2 years. In the first 2 battles, the human race managed to score huge wins and kill a large number of Black Ink clansmen thanks to the Universe World Bombardment Strategy and the Small Stone Race Army. In each battle, they had managed to kill between 20 to 30 pseudo-royal lords, although the human race had also lost many 8th Order masters in the process. It was well worth it. If the human race could replicate this kind of situation, they were confident in taking down the no-return pass within a decade. However, how could everything go smoothly in such a large-scale war, which involves millions of lives? In the 3rd battle, the Black Ink clan completely changed their strategy, shrinking their defense line to its utmost limit and assuming a completely defensive posture. They were like a tortoise with its head and limbs tucked into its shell. In this kind of situation, it was difficult for the human race to achieve anything even with a wide range of tactics. The situation remained the same for the 4th and 5th battles in the ensuing years. The human race army even deliberately showed openings at certain places on the battlefield, trying to lure the Black Ink clan army into attacking. Nonetheless, the Black Ink clan remained as steady as a rock in the face of such temptation, completely unmoved by this seemingly easy victory. Although the human race could forcefully storm the defense line, that would undoubtedly result in massive casualties. The human race was left with no other choice. Since the Black Ink clan had opted for a defensive strategy, they could only slowly wear down the enemy forces. The only silver lining in this was that the human race had complete control of the situation in this kind of battle, allowing them to reduce their losses to an extremely low level. Of course, aside from the faint uneasiness in his heart, Yang Kai was more than happy to see this kind of situation. He would have more time to cultivate and grow stronger the longer the battle dragged on. He had his own temporal river inside, which the flow of time was 30 times faster than the outside world. He would cultivate inside the temporal river after every battle, giving him a full 60 years to cultivate after each fight, allowing him to refine massive amounts of resources, which helped constantly grow his strength. In the 10th year of the human race army's campaign against the no-return pass, after the 6th battle ended, Yang Kai was refining and cultivating in his temporal river, which stretched across the void just like before. But suddenly, a tremor came from outside, waking Yang Kai up. This was the signal he had agreed upon with giant spirit god Aer. As he was completely absorbed in cultivation inside the temporal river, Yang Kai knew nothing about the outside world and had to be informed by Aer. Every time the human race launched an attack on the no-return pass, Aer had used this method to awaken him. Feeling this familiar signal, Yang Kai quickly ended his cultivation and rushed out from the river. Seeing him emerge, the nearby Aer pointed towards the territory gate. As Yang Kai turned his head and gazed through the territory gate, he noticed faint traces of a battle on the other side. He had seen this scene many times already. Every time the human race launched an attack, he would enter the no-return pass from the barren territory and single-handedly restrain many masters from the Black Ink clan, except a frown had appeared on his brow this time, because it was not yet time to attack. Although he was absorbed in cultivation inside the temporal river, he could still feel the passage of time. In the past, he had been able to cultivate for roughly 60 years before the human race launched another assault. However, only 10 years had passed inside the river of time this time. In other words, it had only been 4 months since the last battle. This had never happened before. Yang Kai's expression couldn't help but become grave as he realized that something unforeseen had occurred. Otherwise, the human race wouldn't have rashly changed their strategy. In a flash, he rushed towards the territory gate, but he didn't forget to turn around and warn Aer before disappearing, "Keep an eye on those two. If they dare to leave, you must promptly come over." Air repeatedly nodded, agreeing in a resonant voice, and they also chimed in, but Yang Kai believed that he didn't really understand it. Just like the past few times, the moment Yang Kai stepped out of the territory gate, a dozen or so powerful auras locked onto him. With Dia Luo in the lead, a dozen pseudo-royal lords gathered around him, standing in combat readiness. Yang Kai had to fight with these guys in every battle, but because he had always been hiding his strength, he had never been able to do anything to them. Nonetheless, he had still managed to kill a few pseudo-royal lords after so many battles of wits and courage, so it wasn't a complete loss. Their main goal was to restrain Yang Kai to deprive him of the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the other pseudo-royal lords. Furthermore, they were also afraid of Yang Kai's method of sacrificing small stone race soldiers, so they rarely had any direct confrontation with him. Most of the time, they would only use their auras to interfere, attacking him from a distance. However, things were different this time around. The moment Yang Kai appeared, Dia Luo shouted, "Attack!" Unexpectedly, they were the first to charge at Yang Kai. Although the dozen pseudo-royal lords were clearly afraid of Yang Kai, they still braced themselves and followed after Dia Luo. The reason for this change was because of the human race army's strange movements. For the past 10 years, the humans had launched a battle every 2 years with no exceptions. But this time, the human race army had actually launched an attack on the no-return pass just 4 months after the last battle. Obviously, something had gone wrong. There must be a reason for this deviation. Mo Na Yi, who commanded and deployed the Black Ink clan army, might not be able to figure out what the human race was up to, but it didn't stop him from changing his strategy. While keeping their original defensive strategy unchanged, he ordered Dia Luo and his squad to try their best to stop Yang Kai from meeting up with the human race's higher-ups. This was quite a difficult task, and if possible, Dia Luo would have declined this mission. In the past, all they had to do was restrain Yang Kai. So long as they were careful enough, they wouldn't be in too much danger. But this time, they would have to face him head-on if they wanted to prevent Yang Kai from meeting with the human race's upper echelons. This was not only a difficult task, but also a very dangerous one. Dia Luo still vividly remembered his first encounter with Yang Kai, and how he was severely injured by the latter. Nonetheless, this mission had to be carried out by him. Mo Yi was entangled by Wei Junyang and was unable to escape. Mo Na Yi was responsible for coordinating the army and couldn't easily take action. Only he, the most inexperienced royal lord, could and had to face the killing star. Fortunately, Mo Na Yi had also assured that if the situation became critical, he would come to assist him at a moment's notice. A battle instantly broke out, the aftershocks spreading in all directions. Fortunately, there were still pseudo-royal lords guarding the no-return pass. Otherwise, a large number of Black Ink nests would have been destroyed. Having fought with Yang Kai many times already, Dia Luo was well aware of his opponent's strength. This killing star was far stronger than any other Ninth Order master, and even with so many pseudo-royal lords working together, this battle was still extremely difficult. When Yang Kai summoned the small stone race army and activated purifying light, Dia Luo and the pseudo-royal lords who had been on guard promptly scattered and fled. A glaring light flashed and enveloped the entire sky, but by the time it faded away, Yang Kai's figure had already disappeared. Seeing this, Dia Luo, who was still very much on guard, let out a sigh of relief. He and the other pseudo-royal lords had already tried their best, but they still couldn't stop Yang Kai, and it was definitely not because they were slacking on their duties. According to their past experiences, Yang Kai should have appeared at Pure Yang Pass by now. On the walls of Pure Yang Pass, Mi Jingluan, who was quietly waiting, suddenly noticed something nearby, and immediately sent out a divine sense transmission. "Don't show yourself, just listen to me." Yang Kai, who had snuck in here with the help of the Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, immediately stopped in place and sent a divine sense message back. "I'm here," confirming that Yang Kai had arrived nearby. Mi Jingluan finally let out a sigh of relief. After a moment of deliberation, he continued, "Our previous worries have been confirmed." Yang Kai's expression suddenly became grave and solemn. The primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Mi Jingluan stared at the battlefield and imperceptibly nodded. And the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. When the Black Ink clan suddenly changed their strategy and completely focused on defense during the third battle, their actions had left Yang Kai and Mi Jingluan a little baffled, but it also caused them to become vigilant. In the following conversation, the two of them both agreed that someone as smart as Mo Nai was well aware that the Black Ink clan would not be able to defend the no-return pass, and would definitely not employ such a stupid strategy. Doing so would only delay the inevitable and would not affect the final outcome of the war. In fact, it would even allow the human race to win at a smaller price. Only if the Black Ink clan was waiting for reinforcements would such actions make sense. In this vast universe, if the Black Ink clan really had reinforcements, they would definitely come from the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Unfortunately, no one had any inkling on the situation at the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. The only thing the human race could do was wait for the Void Guard, who were laying space arrays along the way, to reach the primordial heaven's source grand restriction and investigate the situation. According to the schedule, though, the Void Guard should have yet not reached the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. At best, they should be about 75% of the way there, so it should have been impossible for them to obtain any news. A message came from the Void Guard. They discovered a large number of Black Ink clansmen rushing towards the no-return pass from the direction of the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Mi Jingluan said they should have all escaped from the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Furthermore, their overall strength is very high. Hearing this, Yang Kai's expression suddenly became serious. There really was something wrong with the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Black Ink clansmen to escape in such large numbers. Did Mo wake up? What about Wu Kuang? What about the suppressing Black Ink army? Yang Kai's emotions were suddenly in turmoil. Yang Kai had been considering when Mo would wake up for a long time, but he couldn't be certain of such a thing, nor had he gained anything from probing Mo Nai. Perhaps Mo Nai himself didn't know any more than he did. Right now, Yang Kai could not rely on the World Tree, so even if he wanted to go to the primordial heaven's source grand restriction to assess the situation, he couldn't. His previous worries had come true, and the favorable situation of the human race had suddenly become uncertain. Suppressing his chaotic thoughts, Yang Kai stated, the problem with the primordial heaven's source grand restriction should have occurred 5 or 6 years ago. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5900. Investigation. Marshall Peak, it should be. Mi Jingluan nodded lightly. During the third battle, the Black Ink clan suddenly changed their strategy and went into full defensive mode, which Yang Kai and Mi Jingluan found quite strange. However, if the Black Ink clan at the No-Return Pass got word from the primordial heaven's source grand restriction that help was on the way, everything would make sense. Since they knew about the reinforcements coming from the primordial heaven's source grand restriction, they had opted for an all-out defensive strategy. As long as they could hold on until reinforcements arrived, they might be able to execute a pincer attack on the human race and catch them off guard, thereby turning the tables on them. It wasn't hard for the Black Ink clan to get the news about the primordial heaven's source grand restriction. Black Ink nests not only had the ability to spawn Black Ink clansmen, but this strange thing also held another advantage in transmitting information that could not be matched by any other known means. Judging by the situation, the Black Ink clan's response was undoubtedly correct. As long as they continued to defend at the No-Return Pass, they would be able to hold out for more than a decade until reinforcements arrived. The only way this wouldn't happen is if the human race decided to launch an all-out attack to take down the no-return pass at all costs before their reinforcements arrived. Does that mean that the Void Guard encountered the Black Ink Clan's reinforcements? Was there a clash? Yang Kai asked. Mi Jingluan quickly replied, not for the time being. The Void Guard don't have many people, but each of them is a master who would be prudent in their actions. On the other hand, the Black Ink Clan army is marching straight ahead, heading right towards their goal, without trying to hide themselves. After the Void Guard discovered the situation, they immediately sent back a warning and then began monitoring the progress of the Black Ink Clan reinforcements. However, the deployment of the space arrays will be delayed. Because of this was something that couldn't be helped. According to the original plan, the Void Guard under Wu Yi's lead would set up space arrays all along the way to the primordial heavens source Grand Restriction. This way would make it much more convenient for the human race to attack the primordial heavens source Grand Restriction after conquering the no-return pass, saving them all the time which would have been wasted in transit. But now that they had encountered the Black Ink Clan reinforcements halfway, setting up the space arrays had to be delayed. In fact, they even had to remove their own traces to prevent the Black Ink Clan reinforcements from discovering anything. The moment Mi Jingluan received the Void Guard's message, he realized the gravity of the situation and immediately launched the 7th attack. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to contact Yang Kai. It could be said that the reason this battle was happening was because Mi Jingluan wanted to contact Yang Kai. As for dealing damage to the no-return pass, that was inconsequential today. Yang Kai sank into contemplation. Something must have happened to the primordial heavens source Grand Restriction, but no one knows exactly what. The only thing that's apparent from the current situation is that the suppressing Black Ink army is in trouble. Otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed Black Ink clansmen to escape. In the worst-case scenario, MO is completely awake and has broken out of the primordial heaven source Grand Restriction, while the suppressing Black Ink army has been completely wiped out. Suppressing the worry and pain in his heart, Yang Kai tried his best to find a glimmer of clarity in this chaotic situation. After a long time, he finally spoke. It should still take the Black Ink Clan reinforcements over a decade more to arrive at the no-return pass. So, the situation isn't that bad. But what will come, Mi Jingluan softly replied. We must seize the no-return pass before the Black Ink Clan reinforcements arrive. Otherwise, once they get here, and the Black Ink Clan at the no-return pass make a move, we will be facing attacks on 2 fronts. If that really happened, not to mention attacking the primordial heaven source Grand Restriction, it would be difficult to say whether the human race army would be able to make it out alive. Be that as it may, it was extremely difficult to take down the no-return pass in the current situation. The entirety of the no-return pass had been set up like a tortoiseshell by Mo Na Yi, with no gap for the human race to exploit. Even after so many battles, the Black Ink Clan had only suffered some superficial wounds. Mi Jingluan continued. On the bright side, the enemy is in the open while we are in the dark. Yang Kai nodded. This is indeed an advantage. It might not even have occurred to the Black Ink Clan reinforcements that their movements have been exposed. One had to admit that establishing a special organization like the Void Guard before the war and making them lay space arrays along the way in advance was truly a stroke of luck. If it weren't for the fact that the Void Guard had set out in advance and accidentally encountered the Black Ink Clan reinforcements along the way, perhaps the enemy would have arrived without the human race's knowledge. That would have been a total disaster. Senior brother, Yang Kai called out, I want to check on these reinforcements. You're going personally? Mi Jingluan was slightly taken aback. I've already sent someone to investigate. Yang Kai asserted, I can only rest assured after checking them personally. I need to verify some things. I hope the situation hasn't reached a critical point yet. Mi Jingluan thought about it for a moment before acceding. Okay, but if you don't show your face for a long time, There is no guarantee that Emonayi won't notice your absence. That's fine, but senior brother still needs to devise a new strategy and prolong the battle until my return. Once I'm back, we can end things here for the moment. That won't be a problem. Mi Jingluan readily agreed. Right now, the Black Ink clan is only focusing on defense. The initiative is in our hands, so we can decide when to end the fighting. I'll have to trouble you with this then, senior brother. As Yang Kai finished speaking, he surged his strength and flew away. A moment later, he arrived at the temporary human race camp located 3 days away, where there was a universe temple with a space array. Noticing Yang Kai's arrival, the 2 void guards who were stationed here were both stunned, as there shouldn't have been a reason for him to appear here at this time. Be that as it may, they didn't ask any questions. They just readied the space array under Yang Kai's instructions and let him teleport away. With each teleportation, Yang Kai went deeper and deeper into the Black Ink battlefield. The Void Guard had left behind dozens of universe temples in the void over the years, and each was within the range of the previous space array. Each universe temple was further hidden by a grand array. So, in this vast void, if one did not specifically search for it, it would be difficult to find any traces of the space arrays. Furthermore, even if one of the universe temples was destroyed for some unknown reason, it was not that big of a problem. The Void Guard still had spare universe temples with them, and they could easily rush to the damaged location and re-establish the link. Having said that, this kind of long-distance teleportation using the universe temples was a little taxing on ordinary cultivators. If one's cultivation wasn't sufficient, they would need to rest for a while after a few subsequent teleportations. In addition, the space arrays themselves would also need frequent maintenance for such intense usage. Fortunately, it was not that troublesome for Yang Kai, as he was proficient in the Tao of Space, so this kind of teleportation posed no pressure to him. After dozens of teleportations, Yang Kai arrived at the leading temple less than 3 days later. There were quite a few Void Guards stationed there, numbering in dozens. Originally, they were tasked with arranging more space arrays further up ahead, but due to some unforeseen circumstances along the way, they had all been stuck here. Seeing Yang Kai, everyone who had been a little anxious all this time seemed to have found their pillar of support. All of them calmed down and bowed in unison. Tao Lord Miao Fei Ping stepped forward to take charge. Where's Li Wuyi? Yang Kai looked around, but didn't see Li Wuyi anywhere. Miao Fei Ping quickly explained, senior brother Li is monitoring the movements of the Black Ink clan reinforcements with a few junior brothers. Yang Kai nodded his acknowledgement. Is the other party aware of you? Miao Fei Ping shook his head in response. I don't think so. Senior brother Li has given them a wide berth all this time. The moment he noticed the Black Ink clan reinforcements, he immediately ordered us to conceal ourselves while retreating to this position. The Black Ink clan probably never thought they would be discovered in such a place, so their vigilance is lacking. Although he had obtained some information from Mi Jingluan, after hearing it straight from Miao Fei Ping, Yang Kai was finally a little relieved. As long as the Void Guard's whereabouts were not discovered, there was still room to maneuver. How do I find Li Wuyi? Yang Kai asked again. Miao Fei Ping immediately took out a space beacon and stated, handing it to Yang Kai, senior brother Li has the corresponding space beacon on him. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and took it. However, he didn't immediately use it to teleport. After all, he was completely unaware of the situation on Li Wuyi's side. If he were to rashly teleport to his position, their whereabouts might be exposed. Yang Kai activated the space beacon for a brief moment before withdrawing his energy, giving Li Wuyi a sign that someone was about to teleport over. If it was safe, Li Wuyi would definitely respond. After patiently waiting for a moment, the space beacon in Yang Kai's hand flickered. Yang Kai nodded his acknowledgement and activated the space beacon. The next moment, space principles undulated before Yang Kai vanished. In the void, Several figures were using their own space secret techniques to conceal their figures and auras. Under this kind of concealment, it was basically impossible for the Black Ink clan reinforcements to detect their presence. The leader of these figures was none other than Li Wu-yi. At this moment, he was holding a space beacon in his hand, a little puzzled as to why someone from the nearest universe temple would send such a signal. But the next moment he understood. As space principles fluctuated, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. When Li Wu-yi saw who it was, he breathed a long sigh of relief. He knew that after he sent the news back, Supreme Commander Mi would send someone to investigate, but he had never thought that it would be Yang Kai himself. The Void Guard were about to bow to Yang Kai when he waved them off, and instead asked Li Wu-yi, "Where are they?" Li Wu-yi pointed in a certain direction. Yang Kai looked in that direction and indeed noticed a billowing mass of black ink clouds. He also saw an army of black ink clansmen rushing forward. From a distance, it looked like a huge sea of darkness was racing through the void. Yang Kai was secretly shocked as there was a huge number of black ink clansmen, at least 10 million of them. This number might not be much compared to the number of black ink clansmen participating in the main war. However, if all of these reinforcements were masters rather than cannon fodder, it would be a terrifying force indeed. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5901. Not that bad. Marshall Peak, the Black Ink clan's method of classification was different from that of the human race. The human race had distinct names for each cultivation realm, and although the Black Ink clan's classification was also based on strength, the divisions below the feudal lords were quite rough and broad. For instance, the low-rank Black Ink clansmen included all the Black Ink clansmen who were equivalent to Open Heaven realm humans at or below the Third Order. High-rank Black Ink clansmen corresponded to humans from the Fourth Order to the Sixth Order. Only when they became feudal lords would they be differentiated separately, which corresponded to the human Seventh Order Open Heaven realm. Territory lords were equivalent to the Eighth Order, and royal lords to the Ninth Order. As Black Ink clansmen below the low rank, they were all just lumped together as Black Ink serfs. Generally speaking, such Black Ink clansmen were just born recently from Black Ink nests and had not had much time for growth. In every battle between the human race and Black Ink clan, these serfs were basically just sent out to die. They were the Black Ink clan's cannon fodder, and their deaths would consume the strength of the human race while spreading Black Ink's strength to create an advantageous environment for the main Black Ink clan army. Li Wu-yi had no idea how strong the Black Ink clan army of 10 million that had rushed over from the primordial heaven source Grand Restriction was. After all, he couldn't get too close to investigate, but from the information he had gathered, the overall strength of this Black Ink clan army was probably the strongest that the human race had ever seen, because he could clearly feel terrifying auras coming from within this army, even from such a huge distance. This was undoubtedly the auras of the pseudo-royal lords. "Is there a royal lord?" Yang Kai asked via divine sense. Li Wu-yi shook his head. "I'm not sure." Because the pseudo-royal lords couldn't control their own strength, they couldn't restrain their auras. Royal lords, on the other hand, could do precisely that. So, even if there were royal lords in the midst of this army, Li Wu-yi wouldn't be able to detect them. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai suggested, "You stay here, I'll go take a look." Li Wu-yi immediately nodded. "Be careful." He was well aware of Yang Kai's capabilities, so there was nothing to worry about. In addition, with the help of Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, it could be said that no one was more suited for scouting than Yang Kai. The next moment, Yang Kai activated Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, concealing his figure and aura as he flew towards the rapidly advancing Black Ink army. Even from afar, this surging Black Ink army was extremely vast, and after approaching it, one could further feel its oppressiveness. A moment later, Yang Kai arrived near the Black Ink clan army, closing to a distance of just 1 million kilometers away. This was quite close, but also had a decent safety margin. Before confirming whether there was a royal lord present in this Black Ink clan army or not, this was already the limit. If Yang Kai moved any closer, even with the support of Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, he might arouse the Black Ink clan's suspicion. The billowing black ink tide rapidly flowed across Yang Kai's field of vision, and upon closely investigating, Yang Kai was secretly shocked. From a distance, Yang Kai only knew that there were many pseudo-royal lords in this army, but it was difficult to estimate exactly how many there were. However, Yang Kai could clearly feel them at such a close distance. There were almost 300 pseudo-royal lords, an army of 10 million with 300 pseudo-royal lords. Such a lineup was comparable to the entire Black Ink clan in the 3,000 worlds when it was at its peak. Not only were there pseudo-royal lords, but there were also quite a lot of innate territory lords and even ordinary territory lords, as well as an astonishing number of feudal lords. Yang Kai didn't find a single low-ranked Black Ink clansman. Even the weakest soldiers here were high-ranked Black Ink clansmen. This discovery made his heart a little heavy. The Black Ink clan army in front of them could only be described as an elite force, the most powerful army the human race had ever encountered. Even the Black Ink clan army currently defending the no-return pass was inferior to this army. Are there any true royal lords? Yang Kai continued to observe. The reason he had personally come here to investigate was to find out about this matter, as it was of utmost importance to the future of the human race. Although the auras radiating from the pseudo-royal lords were almost the same as those of the real royal lords, if one observed carefully enough, they would still be able to distinguish the two. The auras of the pseudo-royal lords and the royal lords were almost the same in terms of the strength, but the pseudo-royal lords' auras fluctuated quite a lot, unlike true royal lords. Someone like Yang Kai, who often dealt with royal lords and pseudo-royal lords, could tell the difference at a glance. Maintaining a distance of 1 million kilometers, Yang Kai kept pace with the huge Black Ink clan army while constantly observing. It took about half a day for Yang Kai to finally conclude his observation. He did not find any trace of a true royal lord. Still not at ease, Yang Kai closed the distance between himself and the Black Ink clan army and deliberately released a trace of his aura, ensuring that even if a royal lord noticed it, he could immediately conceal himself again. After a while, Yang Kai finally relaxed. He could conclude that there were no royal lords in this Black Ink clan army, allowing him to breathe a long sigh of relief. From the looks of it, the situation was not as bad as he had thought. The primordial heavens source grand restriction had not completely collapsed. If the primordial heavens source grand restriction had been completely broken, the Black Ink clan would not be sending pseudo-royal lords, but true royal lords. The fact that there wasn't a single true royal lord amongst the Black Ink clan army of 10 million here was incontrovertible proof of this. Be that as it may, it was an undeniable fact that there must be something wrong with the primordial heaven source grand restriction, something similar to when the innate territory lords had escaped last time, but on a much bigger scale. Looking at the massive Black Ink cloud passing by, Yang Kai suppressed the murderous intent in his heart and quietly withdrew. Although he could launch an attack right now and catch this Black Ink clan army off guard, he was still just one man. Even if the nearby Li Wu, Yi, and the others of the Void Guard came to support him, they would not be able to do much damage to this force. Furthermore, once Yang Kai made a move here, word would definitely spread to the no-return pass. At that time, the human race would lose the intelligence advantage of having discovered the Black Ink clan reinforcements. The Black Ink clan reinforcements would take at least 10 years to reach the no-return pass, so there was no need to disturb them yet. Returning to Li Wuyi's side, Yang Kai ordered, "Setting up the space array is temporarily postponed." The Void Guard's new mission is to monitor the movements of these Black Ink clan reinforcements. Yes, Li Wu Yi replied solemnly. Also, leave a few people here to continue monitoring this place. Li Wu Yi quickly understood Yang Kai's worries. Are you worried that there are other Black Ink clan reinforcements on their way? Right now, the human race had only discovered one batch of Black Ink clan reinforcements, but no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be more. Leaving behind some people here to monitor was a necessity to not be caught off guard. Yang Kai agreed with a nod. That's right. Other than that, I need you to go to the Primordial Heavens Source Grand Restriction and investigate the situation there. If possible, Yang Kai wanted to personally investigate the situation. But even though the Void Guard had already traveled about 75% of the way there, they were still quite far from the Primordial Heavens Source Grand Restriction. Even with Yang Kai's top speed, a round trip would probably require several months. The battle in the No-Return Pass was still ongoing. Mi Jingluan could still cover his disappearance if it was limited to a few days, so he had some time to return yet, but a few months would be too long. It was hard to say if you wouldn't be able to guess some things if that much time elapsed with no sign of Yang Kai showing up. If it was just a few days, even someone as smart and shrewd as you might not be able to imagine that Yang Kai had run to this position and met the Black Ink clan reinforcements. After all, the existence of the Void Guard was a secret to the Black Ink clan. Understood. Li Wu Yi nodded. Be extremely careful on the way there, Yang Kai exhorted. Li Wu Yi lightly chuckled. Although your current cultivation is higher than mine, I've lived longer than you. Don't underestimate me. Yang Kai was speechless. I don't mean that. I know, Li Wu Yi casually smiled. Then I'll take my leave first. Saying so, he activated his own instantaneous movement technique and disappeared. After Li Wu Yi left, Yang Kai gave a few more instructions to the remaining Void Guard before returning to the nearest Universe Temple. The Void Guard there promptly came to greet him, after which Yang Kai informed them of their new mission, which they all accepted in unison. After everything was settled, Yang Kai used the space array to teleport back to the No-Return Pass. The battle was still raging at the No-Return Pass, as Yi was paying close attention to every subtle change in the battlefield as lingering doubts built up in his heart. The human race had launched an attack on the No-Return Pass just 4 months after their previous assault, which had broken their established pattern greatly. He was unable to figure out what the human race was up to, but judging by the current situation, everything was proceeding normally. The human race was attacking the No-Return Pass as usual, and the Black Ink clan was defending as usual, just like the previous several battles. However, Yi always had a nagging feeling that a layer of fog was clouding his vision, and behind this fog was a truth he couldn't figure out. Nonetheless, no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't dispel this fog. The reason behind this was the lack of information. The human race had already sighted the Black Ink clan reinforcements, and the Void Guard were now closely monitoring them. The Black Ink clan, on the other hand, believed that they had hidden themselves well. Even if Yi was incredibly shrewd, it would have never occurred to him that the human race would actually have a special organization like the Void Guard that was setting up space arrays leading to the Primordial Heavens Source Grand Restriction since 10 years ago. It would also not have occurred to him that the human race had launched the 7th attack only because Mi Jingluan wanted to get Yang Kai's attention to warn him of the Void Guard's discovery. There was simply no other hidden meaning behind it. Ye's thoughts were clouded by first impressions. From beginning to end, he believed that the human race was up to something, so the more he thought about it, the more he spiraled in worry rather than simply assuming the simplest answer was the correct one. The only thing he got right was that it must have something to do with Yang Kai, because after this battle had begun, Yang Kai disappeared without a trace after killing his way out of the No-Return Pass. At first, Many of the pseudo-royal lords were still on guard against Yang Kai's sneak attacks, but since then the latter never appeared, even when many good opportunities had appeared. The Black Ink clan had no idea where he had gone. Mo Na Yi had also been paying close attention to the situation at Pure Yang Pass. In the past, whenever there was a big battle, Yang Kai would run over to Mi Jingluan's side and communicate with him. But this time, even that did not happen. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5902. Storming the No Return Pass. Marshall Peak, of course, if Yang Kai was intentionally hiding, Mo Na Yi would not be able to find his trace from such a distance. But Yang Kai was still nowhere to be seen even after several days of fighting. What is he doing? From Mo Na Yi's point of view, the more he could not spot Yang Kai, the more suspicious things became. At this time, Yang Kai had already returned to Pure Yang Pass after a series of space array teleportations. Hiding near Mi Jingluan, Yang Kai began to give him a summary of what he had discovered on this trip and his own conjectures. Mi Jingluan's expression became extremely solemn after hearing Yang Kai's account of the situation. According to the information Yang Kai had gathered, once the elite Black Ink clan reinforcements reached the battlefield and coordinated with the Black Ink clan at the No Return Pass, the human race army would not be able to resist. If the Black Ink clan attacked the human race from two sides at that time, the human race would neither be able to advance or retreat. Fortunately, the reinforcements were still far off and would take a decade or so to reach this place at their current pace. What made Mi Jingluan even happier was the absence of true royal lords in the Black Ink clan reinforcements. In light of this, Yang Kai's speculation that the primordial heavens source grand restriction hadn't completely collapsed must be correct. But that begged the question, how much longer could the primordial heavens source grand restriction remain standing? Originally, the assault on the No Return Pass was going quite well, but at this moment, Mi Jingluan could feel a dark storm brewing on the horizon. Rubbing his forehead, Mi Jingluan asked, "Junior brother, what are your thoughts?" Yang Kai looked towards the front line that kept being pushed by both sides before slowly speaking his thoughts. "We have to end this battle as soon as possible." Mi Jingluan's brow couldn't help but furrow as he muttered, "But many people will die." Yang Kai looked down. The longer this battle drags on, the greater the hidden dangers of the primordial heavens source grand restriction will become. Moreover, the number of deaths over these years has already reached an astonishing number. Hasn't it? Mi Jingluan remained silent. He was well aware of the current circumstances and what the most sensible decision was. Nonetheless, he still felt reluctant to give the order because he knew that once he did, many soldiers would have to pay for it with their lives. As the saying goes, there is no place for kindness in leading an army. Mi Jingluan knew he was not a benevolent person. Over the years, there had been many instances where he had no choice but to issue cruel and merciless orders. But if not for those orders, the human race would not be able to create the greatest results with the least cost. Every soldier who had died on the battlefield had died a worthy death. As the supreme commander of the army, who was ultimately responsible for issuing orders, Mi Jingluan always felt guilty towards these dead soldiers, but he never felt guilt towards the human race as a whole. But the current situation was different. If he issued this order, millions of brave human soldiers would surely die. That was an enormous number. The weight of this was so heavy that even someone like Mi Jingluan found it difficult to bear. However, the source of the Black Ink clan disaster was not the No Return Pass, but the primordial heaven source grand restriction. Although the human race could maintain this kind of offense and take down the No Return Pass in a decade or so with only minimal sacrifices, who could say that nothing would happen to the primordial heaven source grand restriction within those 10 years? If something irreversible happened at the primordial heavens source grand restriction over the next decade, even if the human race managed to capture the No Return Pass, it would prove meaningless. At that time, the losses would be even greater. Mi Jing Luan clearly understood all of this, but he could not get over the fact that all they needed was another 10 years. The war between the human race and the Black Ink clan had raged for millions of years. Compared to that, 10 years was a blink of an eye. However, at this critical juncture, 10 years became an unbearable delay. Even Mi Jing Luan, who had always appeared as a cultured and scholarly gentleman in front of the world, couldn't help but curse in his heart to alleviate his frustration. Right now, the only silver lining for the human race army was that the Black Ink clan had been greatly weakened after having fought 6 battles over the past decade. Not to mention anything else, just the number of pseudo-royal lords who had fallen in this decade had already crossed the 100 mark, while the number of feudal lords and territory lords who had perished was many times that number. The main reason for this was because the Black Ink clan had suffered massive casualties in the first 2 battles. In the later battles, the Black Ink clan had always been on defense, so their losses weren't as significant, but they still suffered some. As such, if the human race really decided to launch an all-out attack, throwing all caution to the wind, it shouldn't be a problem to take down the no-return pass. How do we deal with the Black Ink giant spirit gods? Mi Jing Luan asked, suppressing his chaotic thoughts. If they wanted to occupy the no-return pass, they would ultimately have to confront the Black Ink giant spirit gods. They could not avoid this hurdle. During these past 10 years, whether it was the human race or the Black Ink clan, both sides had never fully committed their forces to the battle, always holding back their trump cards. The Black Ink clan needed to stall for time for their reinforcements to arrive. The human race, on the other hand, wanted to minimize their casualties as much as possible, but at the same time, they didn't want to expand the scale of the battle to the point where the Black Ink giant spirit gods would be dragged in. With their mutual interest aligned, the strongest masters acted with restraint. Because of their geographical advantage, the Black Ink giant spirit gods would occasionally provide timely but limited assistance to the Black Ink clan. Da, and Air, on the other hand, simply watched from across the territory gate. I'll cooperate with Ada and Air. I can't say that I can kill them, but it's possible to pin them down, Yang Kai replied. Mi Jing Luan nodded his acknowledgement upon hearing this. If Yang Kai really managed to accomplish this feat, the human race's casualties would be significantly reduced. After the humans had routed the Black Ink clan at the no-return pass, they could easily take care of the Black Ink giant spirit gods. Senior brother, have you made your decision? Yang Kai asked. Mi Jing Luan stared at the battlefield for a long time before aguishly lamenting. How did things develop to this point? Yang Kai remained silent. A moment later, Mi Jing Luan stated in a grim and heavy voice, now that it has come to this, we can only go all out. Fortunately, he had not remained idle and unprepared these years. In a battle, a qualified commander could anticipate all scenarios and make preparations for every contingency. Of course, Mi Jing Luan had never expected reinforcements to be on their way from the primordial heavens source grand restriction, so he had devised what to do if the human race was forced to take down the no-return pass in a short time. Having been forced to this step, all he needed to do was to put the appropriate strategy into action. Of course, just because Mi Jing Luan had planned for this didn't mean things would go as he anticipated. No one had expected that the curtains to the final battle of the human race's attack on the no-return pass would open this way. Yang Kai stated, since that's the case, I will go and try to eliminate as many pseudo-royal lords as possible. Senior brother, please give the order. Mi Jing Luan imperceptibly nodded his affirmation. The next moment, Yang Kai's aura vanished, whereupon Mi Jing Luan raised his hand slightly. The messenger standing behind him instantly stepped forward and respectfully greeted, Supreme Commander Mi. Mi Jing Luan's low voice rang out. Relay my orders to all armies. The messenger's expression became serious as perked up his ears, attentively listening. However, Mi Jing Luan remained silent for a long time, before the messenger finally heard Mi Jinglun's firm and determined voice, prepare to storm the no-return pass. As one of Mi Jinglun's trusted aides who had been following him all this time, the messenger naturally understood what this order meant. His expression immediately became stern, and although he was filled with shock, he didn't hesitate to relay this order to every commander on the battlefield. As a qualified messenger, he didn't need to question the decisions of the Supreme Commander. He just needed to convey the orders he was given without error. Having finished relaying Mi Jinglun's order, the Seventh Order messenger raised his head and looked towards the battlefield. The next thing reflected in his eyes was the human race warships nimbly shuttling back and forth on the battlefield, as well as a sky alight with the brilliance of various secret techniques and artifacts. He cupped his fists and requested in an earnest voice, "Supreme Commander Mi, I want to participate in the battle." All this time, he had been responsible for relaying Mi Jinglun's orders. He witnessed with his eyes the human race's soldiers desperately fighting on the battlefield because of the orders he had passed down. He had witnessed the death of so many, too many to keep count of, but was powerless to do anything about it. He also knew that their deaths had nothing to do with him. He was just a messenger. He was only relaying Supreme Commander Mi's orders. As for the ensuing casualties and consequences of the orders, it was totally unrelated to him. Be that as it may, not everything in this world could be convinced with logic, such as the human heart. On the eve of the worst battle to have been fought in history, the messenger decided to follow his heart and make his request to the Supreme Commander. Mi Jinglun didn't even turn his head and only spewed a single word. Granted, the messenger bowed in gratitude. Within the walls of the no-return pass, Mo Na Yi was observing the battlefield with a furrow on his brow. His powerful cultivation and vast divine sense allowed him to clearly perceive the situation of the entire battlefield with a single flash of thought. He had seldom left the no-return pass to join the fighting over the years, but it was thanks to his leadership that the Black Ink clan army had managed to repel the human race at the smallest cost on every occasion. This battle was no different from the previous ones. The human race's attacks were tepid, which clearly indicated that they wanted to gradually wear down the Black Ink clan's strength. So, although it had been several days since the battle began, the losses suffered by the Black Ink clan were still within acceptable limits. As for the human race, ever since the third battle, the price paid by the humans in each battle could only be considered insignificant. This was because the Black Ink clan had never thought of making any move on the human race under Mo Na Yi's command. All the Black Ink clan's forces were focused on defense. As such, it was very difficult for them to deal much damage to the humans. There were only two unusual points about this battle. Firstly, the humans had launched this battle far ahead of their usual schedule, breaking the pattern which had been maintained for the past 10 years. And secondly, Yang Kai was nowhere to be seen. After Yang Kai had killed his way out of the barren territory, there had been no sightings of him. This was a very strange and unprecedented event. In the previous battles, Yang Kai would always run out to attack the pseudo-royal lords, forcing Di Luo and his team of 12 pseudo-royal lords to rush to rescue, which was quite annoying. But this time, Yang Kai had not made a move even after so many days. Mo Na Yi couldn't even figure out what Yang Kai was doing at this moment. This kind of unknown variable had caused Mo Na Yi's heart to be filled with anxiety. After all, this was Yang Kai, who had always used extraordinary means to do unbelievable things. Just as he was thinking so, a powerful aura suddenly erupted at a certain spot on the battlefield. This instantly caused Mo Na Yi's heart to clench as he turned his head to look in that direction, only to see a massive river flowing across the void, sweeping towards the battlefield like a whip. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5903. Besieging the enemy's stronghold in order to attack their reinforcements, Marshall Peak, sensing this powerful yet familiar aura, Yu was first overjoyed, but was immediately taken aback. What made him happy was that Yang Kai had finally appeared. He had been hiding in the shadows all this time and hadn't done anything at all. So contrary to what might seem reasonable, his absence put a great deal of pressure on the Black Ink clan. If he made a move, the Black Ink clan could respond appropriately. So when he noticed Yang Kai's aura, Yu was finally relieved. What surprised him was that the target Yang Kai had chosen this time was actually Yu, a veteran royal lord. Yang Kai had made several moves throughout several battles, but each time he did so, his target had always been the pseudo-royal lords, due to his unpredictable means and the eerie Grand Dao River. The pseudo-royal lords he targeted rarely escaped, unless Di Luo managed to come to their rescue in time. It could be said that half the pseudo-royal lords who had fallen on the battlefield over the past 10 years had died directly or indirectly because of Yang Kai. He had almost single-handedly killed so many pseudo-royal lords to the point they were unable to lift their heads. Yet in all that time, Yang Kai had never taken the initiative to attack a true royal lord before, least of all Yu as the most experienced royal lord in the Black Ink clan. The corners of Ye's brow immediately twitched as he felt that Yang Kai had gone crazy to make such a crazy move. He thus immediately shouted, "Di Luo?" There was no verbal response, but the moment Yang Kai appeared, Di Luo led a dozen pseudo-royal lords towards him at astonishing speed. Di Luo had already become quite familiar with rushing to the rescue. In every battle, he would lead a dozen pseudo-royal lords to pin down Yang Kai, so there was no need for Yi to give him any detailed instructions. On the other side, Yu was obviously taken aback by the sudden ambush. Just now, he had been fighting Luo Tinghe alone. This was the third Ninth Order master he had fought in the past 10 years. Unlike Xiang Shan's relentless onslaught or Wei Junyang's boldness, Enyang Cave Heaven's Luo Ting, his attacking style was more calculated and meticulous. She would execute exquisite secret techniques in a seemingly endlessly chain, making her like a never-ending storm, leaving Yu extremely frustrated. Even though his foundation was better than Luo Tinghe's, it was difficult for him to gain the upper hand. From the beginning of their fight until now, they were evenly matched. A royal lord's senses were extremely sharp, so even if Yang Kai had used Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, it was difficult for the latter to completely hide his traces. Pseudo-royal lords might not be able to guard against Yang Kai's sneak attack, but Yu could. In fact, Yu already had a vague premonition before Yang Kai even launched his attack. Therefore, he was only shocked for a moment when Yang Kai appeared and instantly reacted appropriately. He promptly collected the copious amount of Black Ink strength around him and created a shield to defend himself. Right then, Luo Tinghe's attack struck the barrier, but it only caused his body to violently sway and was unable to cause any damage. Yang Kai's space-time river swept in just at that moment, gushing straight from above and engulfing him. Yu used the tried and tested strategy of fighting back with everything he had, bombarding Yang Kai's Dao Strength River with everything he had in an attempt to force him back. The raging waves crashed against Yu's barrage again and again, while the Dao strengths fluctuated nonstop. At the same time, Luo Ting, he unleashed her strength. The combined assault of two Ninth Order masters proved too much, however, and quickly caused Yu to sink into the space-time river. The undercurrents inside the river instantly started surging. Surprisingly, it was Yu who was using his own strength to stir up trouble and bombard Yang Kai's Dao strengths. The best way to deal with this situation was naturally for Yang Kai to enter the space-time river and use the environment to his advantage to engage in a fierce battle with Yu. With his current strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill the trapped Yu. But he didn't do this. If he wanted to kill a royal lord, he would have already done so 10 years ago, But killing a royal lord would not have done any good to the overall situation. The key masters in the Black Ink clan right now were still the pseudo-royal lords. They're here. Yang Kai completely ignored the turmoil of his Dao strengths and lightly shouted, "Leave them to me." Luo Tinghe replied, as she gently pointed her finger towards the void. The next moment, Yin Yang Dao's strength rapidly filled the surroundings before an enormous Yin Yang fish manifested, enveloping Dia Luo and the dozen pseudo-royal lords who were rushing over to help Mou. The Yin Yang fish slowly started rotating like it had a life of its own. Immediately, an inexplicable pull appeared in the void, causing the group of Black Ink clan powerhouses to lose their footing. Di Yaluo and the other Black Ink clan powerhouses immediately launched numerous secret techniques together, trying to break free from this inexplicable force. But before they could escape, Yang Kai was already upon them. No one saw how he moved, but when he appeared behind a pseudo-royal lord with his azure dragon spear, the latter didn't even notice, thrusting the spear with one hand and executing a palm strike with the other. Yang Kai mercilessly attacked the pseudo-royal lord. Immediately, an inexplicable burst of energy appeared in the void, as if something had been cut off. This pseudo-royal lord's expression immediately changed, because the moment Yang Kai threw out his palm, his aura connection with the other two pseudo-royal lords in his battle formation was severed. With the aura connection severed, the Three Fortunes formation instantly collapsed. "Be careful!" When Dia Luo roared at him, the pseudo-royal lord finally realized that a great disaster had befallen him. He promptly turned around and threw a punch, but all that filled his vision was a rapidly enlarging spear tip. Regardless of his dire situation, he was still a pseudo-royal lord. Facing such a crisis, he didn't panic and instead changed his punch to a palm, smacking it towards the oncoming azure dragon spear. At the same time, he tilted his head to avoid this fatal blow. However, that was where things ended for him. Caught inside the yin-yang fish, his movements were significantly restricted, and to top it off, he was being targeted by Yang Kai. How could things possibly end well for him? The last thing this pseudo-royal lord saw was the long spear he dodged transform into multiple spear shadows that rained down on him. By the time the blood splashed out, the pseudo-royal lord's aura had vanished. Then a second, then a third. The other two pseudo-royal lords who had formed the battle formation with the first followed in his footsteps almost immediately after. Only then did the secret techniques from all directions rain down on the spot where Yang Kai was standing. Unfortunately, all that was left there was his afterimage, and by the time it faded away, Yang Kai had already arrived on the opposite side. He had teleported to another three pseudo-royal lords in battle formation, and was about to launch a similar attack. "In your dreams," Di Yaluo furiously roared again as he used all his strength to try and rescue the three pseudo-royal lords. However, another figure suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his path. A jade white palm flew out at him, carrying an earth-shattering power with it. Di Yaluo's expression became grave, and without hesitation, he immediately met this palm with an attack of his own. Luo Tinghe's foundation was lacking compared to a veteran royal lord like Mou, but she was still stronger than Di Yaluo, who had only become a royal lord a few years ago. As such, it was relatively easier to fight him. With her restraining Di Yaluo, Yang Kai was able to act unhindered. Immediately, space principles surged as the surrounding space froze, and a large number of small stone race soldiers appeared out of nowhere, surrounding this area. In a flash, a look of horror appeared on the faces of all the Black Ink clansmen, including Di Yaluo. The next instant, the great sun and moon marks on the back of Yang Kai's hand glowed brightly before yellow and blue lights began flowing out of the small stone race soldiers, rapidly fusing into a dazzling sun which exploded soon after. When the dazzling white light faded a few breaths later, a few pseudo-royal lords had disappeared from the battlefield, leaving clouds of blood mist in their place. As for the surviving pseudo-royal lords, they had clearly become much weaker after suffering this blow. Yang Kai promptly charged at them with his spear in hand. Immediately, an aura of death enveloped these pseudo-royal lords. On the other side, Luo Ting, he looked surprised, staring at a fleeing figure with a frown. He is quite fast. The moment Luo saw Yang Kai summon the small stone race army, he decisively used his secret technique to escape. Luo Ting, he didn't even have time to stop him. However, executing this secret technique obviously cost Luo a great deal of strength, so his figure looked quite miserable afterwards. Luo Ting, he no longer paid any attention to the fleeing Luo, promptly turning around and joined forces with Yang Kai to kill the remaining pseudo-royal lords who had been injured by the burst of purifying light. How could the pseudo-royal lords be their opponents under these circumstances? Their auras vanished one after another, though the counterattacks of these pseudo-royal lords before their deaths could not be scoffed at. Knowing that they were doomed to die, each pseudo-royal lord displayed suicidal determination in their final moments, causing both Yang Kai and Luo Ting to suffer some injuries. In particular, Yang Kai's Dao strengths were fluctuating in a wild manner, not because he was using his own Dao strengths to kill his enemies, but because the space-time river was under attack. After dealing with all the pseudo-royal lords, Yang Kai shouted, "I'll leave him to you." A moment after he shouted, a figure rushed out from the space-time river. It was none other than Mou, who had been swallowed by the space-time river earlier. Although he had been trapped inside, Mou had not suffered any physical injuries. His aura, on the other hand, was a little weaker than before, though this did not affect his combat strength much. When Mou saw the tragic sight before him, a cold and frigid look took over his face, but before he could do anything, Luo Ting rushed him, and the two resumed their original battle. Yang Kai, on the other hand, didn't even spare Mou a glance. He raised his hand towards the space-time river, grabbing it like it was a whip, then used instantaneous movement, disappearing into the void. He didn't attack Mou with Luo Ting. Unless Yang Kai exposed his true strength, it wouldn't be easy to kill a veteran royal lord. Furthermore, it was more convenient to sneak attack the pseudo-royal lords than to kill a tough nut like Mou. At the no-return pass, Mo Naya's face turned ashen. He had never expected that his strategy against Yang Kai would be broken so easily. Yang Kai sneak attacked Mou, but clearly he never had any intention of fighting him. His true goal was the pseudo-royal lords led by Luo. These were the stumbling blocks that had been pestering Yang Kai all this time, making it difficult for him to display his full strength. With a simple move of besieging the enemy's stronghold in order to attack their reinforcements, everyone in Luo's team, apart from Luo himself who had managed to escape, had been slaughtered by Yang Kai and Luo Ting. The situation has changed. You could keenly sense this. Yang Kai had never done something like this before. The team of pseudo-royal lords led by Luo had successfully managed to restrain Yang Kai in the previous battles, hindering him from displaying his full strength. But by the looks of it, Yang Kai had always had the ability to break free of Luo and the pseudo-royal lord's restraint. It was just that he did not want to, that was all. What the hell made him reveal his fangs today? Sir, Luo, who had fled back to the no-return pass, arrived in front of Mo Nayi, his face filled with shame. He didn't dare to face Yang Kai alone, so he didn't know what to do now. Marshal Peak. Marshal Peak, Chapter 5904. Exchanging pieces. Marshal Peak even now. Mo Nayi had not associated the turn of events in the situation to the fact that Yang Kai's strength had experienced a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering increase to another level. That was because he knew just how difficult it was for a human race master to cultivate. The stronger the cultivator, the more time they had to spend accumulating heritage to grow their power. Since ancient times, there had never existed anyone like Yang Kai, who was able to grow to such an extent in less than 1,000 years after advancing to the Ninth Order. Ever since the humans attacked the no-return pass, Yang Kai had been concealing his ability by feigning weakness. In each battle, he only ever revealed strength as should be expected from a newly advanced Ninth Order master like himself, while trying to avoid head-to-head battles with any of the royal lords. From Mo Na-Ye's perspective, Yang Kai may be stronger than when he just advanced back then in the Universe Furnace world, but such growth was still acceptable. Moreover, it was well known that Yang Kai's abilities were greater than other cultivators in the same realm to begin with, so it was difficult to understand Yang Kai's bottom line without a proper fight with him. Even if someone told Mo Na-Ye about Yang Kai's true strength now, he probably wouldn't believe it. Such a thing was simply nonsensical. The situation had changed subtly since Yang Kai showed up on the battlefield. Though the attack of the humans was still as tepid as before, the various armies had already completed their secret deployments, getting all their forces into position. Yang Kai soon reappeared, this time next to Xiang Shan. Xiang Shan's opponents were 3 pseudo-royal lords who had formed a battle formation, which should make them strong enough to take on this newly promoted Ninth Order master. In the first 2 battles, Xiang Shan fought 2 bloody battles with Mou, which resulted in losses on both sides. Mou had a unique method of healing, so he could recover quickly through the sacrifice of a pseudo-royal lord, but Xiang Shan could not recover as easily. Even with the use of healing pills, it would still take him some time, so his injuries have not been restored completely even until now, causing him to fall into a disadvantage against the 3 pseudo-royal lords from time to time as they fought. This was especially noticeable during the days when Yang Kai had disappeared, as Xiang Shan was almost one-sidedly suppressed by these 3 pseudo-royal lords without having any ability to fight back. But since Yang Kai's emergence, the situation had turned around. These 3 pseudo-royal lords now had to hold back 30% of their strength in preparation to deal with the event of a surprise attack launched by Yang Kai, which gave Xiang Shan some room to breathe. When Yang Kai's figure entered their circle of battle, Xiang Shan, who had received a heads-up prior, burst out with the power he had been accumulating and wielded a fierce blade towards the 3 pseudo-royal lords. His murderous intent spread almost palpably, and even the space around the 3 pseudo-royal lords seemed to freeze, horrifying them all. They had constantly been on guard against Yang Kai, but they never thought that this killing star would target them on such a vast battlefield. Their luck was simply the worst. When the killing star attacked, Xiang Shan suddenly burst out once more, instantly disrupting the rhythm of the 3 Black Ink clan masters. In merely a moment of their panic and loss, life or death had been decided. The long spear was like a dragon, whereas the blade light was biting cold. Yang Kai and Xiang Shan's figures passed by each other like the blades of a pair of shears, instantly cutting through the aura of the 3 pseudo-royal lords. When the powerful auras extinguished, Xiang Shan spat out a mouthful of blood and looked much weaker than before. Yang Kai's body also incurred a few wounds, obviously from the pseudo-royal lord's final struggle before death. At around the same time on the other side of the battlefield, an amazing aura burst out, accompanied by the annihilation of several powerful auras. It was not the fall of Black Ink clan masters, but 8th Order humans. Yang Kai's head snapped over, only to see a turbulent black ink cloud moving about. More than a dozen figures had gathered in a large black tide that slaughtered everything in its way. Even in their battle formations, the 8th Order masters could hardly put up a fight. The reason for that was that there were traces of Mo Na-Ye and Di Yaluo's involvement in this tide, whereas the rest were all pseudo-royals. Almost at the same time as when Yang Kai looked over, Mo Na-Ye turned his head over as well. Their gazes suddenly met, and they could both see the coldness in each other's eyes. Yang Kai instantly understood Mo Na-Ye's intention and praised him inwardly What a cruel and determined heart this guy has. Moments ago, when Dialuo fled back to the no-return pass and returned crestfallen to Mo Naye's side, Mo Naye made a snap decision at that moment, an extremely radical one at that. On his command, a dozen pseudo-royal lords who were standing by to defend the black ink nests flew out in a group under Dialuo's lead, heading straight towards the battlefield. Mo Naye gave up the idea of tracking Yang Kai, since he knew that he would only end up being pulled around by the nose by him that way. This fellow was a master in the Tao of space who could appear and disappear like a ghost. Trying to pin down his tracks would only waste time. The only way to change their passive position to an active one was to give up on defending and attacking instead. If you want to kill our pseudo-royal lords, then I'll go and kill your 8th Order masters. Let's see who will give in first and go to stop the other. This was Mo Naye's decision. Nobody could stop Yang Kai if he wanted to sneak up on them and stir trouble. Mo Naye deeply recognized that he lacked that ability now. Dialuo had already failed, so in that case he would just ignore Yang Kai for now and eliminate opponents he could kill. He would slaughter until the humans ached and despaired. Then even if they were to lose some pseudo-royal lords in battle, their deaths would have been worth it. At the very least, it was better than losing them to Yang Kai's sneak attacks while gaining nothing in return. The result was remarkable, with 2 royal lords personally leading the charge and a team of a dozen pseudo-royal lords behind them. They could easily break up the battle, which had reached a stalemate, and within just a few breaths, at least 28th Order masters on the human race's side fell. This was not enough to make up for the loss of 3 pseudo-royal lords, but it was enough to make the humans real. What will you choose? Mo Naye looked at Yang Kai from a distance, waiting quietly to see his response, but his hands did not stay idle. He continued leading his men towards the next battlefield, moving with momentum like splitting bamboo wherever they went. Very soon, Yang Kai's answer was revealed to them. That was because Yang Kai's figure suddenly disappeared from his vision, and Xiang Shan, who had been standing together with Yang Kai before, also came flying in their direction. All of them were alerted at this change, and their powerful divine senses were swiftly extended in all directions to guard against a possible sneak attack that could come at any moment. However, rather than Yang Kai, whom they had expected to come, they were met with another person instead. As the supreme commander of the army, it's not a prideful thing to attend a battle personally. Following the emergence of that voice, a figure stopped in the middle of the void, with a light raise of his feather fan. A fierce wind suddenly rose up, turning into a sharp blade that could even cut through space. Mi Jingluan. Almost at the same time that Mo Naye moved, Mi Jingluan moved as well, but he had arrived late since Pure Yang Pass was outside of the battlefield. Even after so many years of war, Mi Jingluan had barely stepped onto the battlefield. Compared to his abilities as a 9th Order master, he was needed more by the human race to coordinate the overall situation. However, after seeing through Mo Naye's intentions to exchange lives with lives, Mi Jingluan had no choice but to join the fray. That was because every single 9th Order master had their own opponents to deal with on the battlefield and could not easily extricate themselves, so he was the only one who could subdue these masters for now. However, in the face of Mi Jingluan's provocations and attack, Mo Naye chose to ignore them and simply deflected the attack with the other masters from the Black Ink clan without getting caught up with him at all, immediately flying towards the next battlefield after that. Mi Jingluan paled slightly. Mo Naye's single-mindedness was something he had not anticipated. Just as it was difficult for the Black Ink clan to restrain Yang Kai, Mi Jingluan alone could not stop such a group of masters either. Fortunately, Xiang Shan had also rushed over to join him, so they could at least harass their opponents. The slaughter continued. Everywhere these masters went, large numbers of 8th Order masters would fall. Most of these masters were already in battle formations, formed alongside people that they were familiar with and were in the midst of fighting other enemies. When a large number of powerful enemy reinforcements rushed over, the original balance was broken, resulting in a disaster. While this endless killing was taking place, Mo Na Yi was keeping a close eye on Yang Kai's movements. Xiang Shan had already rushed over, but Yang Kai was still nowhere to be seen. This caused his heart to sink. Despite culling so many Eighth Order Masters, he found it difficult to feel happy about this situation. Instead, he was starting to feel worse and worse. Under normal circumstances, Yang Kai should have come out to stop them, but now he seemed happy to continue showing off his strength, even if it meant continuing this exchange of lives, which was undoubtedly a worrying issue. As expected, Yang Kai's aura appeared on another side of the battlefield, followed by 3 pseudo-royal lords, auras extinguishing. Has it come to this? Mo Na Yi's heart ran cold. He was even beginning to wonder whether the humans had sensed something. But if not, how could Yang Kai have made this choice? How could they have possibly noticed? This makes no sense at all. In the void, Yang Kai pursed his lips, his body constantly flickering, cutting through one battlefield after another. When his space-time river came out, one by one, the pseudo-royal lords fell, freeing up one Ninth Order Master after another, without daring to delay, for even a heartbeat. In such a situation, various Eighth Order Masters would fall for every breath that passed. The only way to stop Mo Na Yi was to free up more Ninth Order Masters so that they could go forth and contain the group of enemy masters led by Mo Na Yi. Of course, Yang Kai could have taken on the task himself, but without revealing his true strength, using Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability to launch sneak attacks from the shadows was simply more efficient. Yang Kai could clearly feel the fall of the Eighth Order Masters. Each one of them was a rare talent of the human race, and each of them had gone through at least thousands of years of cultivation to reach such heights. But on this cruel battlefield, their fall would become nothing more than a cold statistic in the records of history. Has Mo Na Yi noticed something? Otherwise, why would he have joined the battlefield himself? Before the battle, Yang Kai and Mi Jingluan had expected great losses on their side, but seeing it happen with their own eyes still left their hearts bleeding. Yang Kai tried his best to suppress the urge to stop Mo Na Yi and turned all his resentment and pent-up displeasure into powerful attacks, unleashing them from the spear in his hand. Kill. I need to kill more. Kill them all. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5905, Decisive Battle. Marshall Peak, the originally uneventful battle, suddenly heated up into a tragic scene following the sudden appearance of Yang Kai and the movements of Mo Na Yi, Dialuo, and the pseudo-royal lords. At this point, even lower-level officers on both sides had noticed that the situation had changed. The top masters on both sides seemed to be competing on who could kill faster and who could kill more. All over the battlefield, the fall of pseudo-royal lords and Eighth Order Masters could be felt. In terms of killing efficacy, the Black Ink clan was undoubtedly better. A killing squad led by 2 royal lords with a dozen pseudo-royal lords in tow was extremely powerful. The battle formations that the Eighth Order Masters had were simply incapable of defending against such a lineup. As soon as their battle formations were broken, the Eighth Order Masters would quickly be killed. And no matter how fast Yang Kai was, the most he could deal with was 3 pseudo-royal lords at a time. In a short cup of tea's time, as many as 20 pseudo-royal lords had been eliminated. Yang Kai's body was covered in black blood from his killing spree, and the fierce murderous intent surrounding him made him seem like a god of death returning from purgatory, leaving all the pseudo-royal lords in the entire battlefield in fear. However, the humans had also paid an extremely heavy price on their side. As many as 100 Eighth Order Masters had been reduced to nothing more than cold, dead bodies. It wasn't until the Ninth Order Masters had their hands freed one by one to join the encirclement against the Black Ink clan's group of masters that the situation finally eased up. Yang Kai wasn't just cutting down pseudo-royal lords aimlessly. He was specifically targeting the opponents of the Ninth Order Masters. His space techniques brought him to each side of the battlefield, where he worked together with the Ninth Order Masters to deal with their enemies. Once the last Ninth Order Master swept over, the top masters on the human race's side formed an encirclement around the mighty Black Ink clan killing squad. It was only now that Mi Jingluan could finally breathe a sigh of relief. In the void, Mi Jingluan, Xiangshan, Ouyang Lai, Wei Junyang, Xiao Xiao, Wu Qin, Shi Dezhuang, and Tang Tao all stood. 8 Ninth Order Masters were sealing the Black Ink clan team from all directions. It could be said that all Ninth Order Masters, excluding Yang Kai, who was roaming around and picking off enemies, Luo Tinghe, who was facing off against MOU alone, as well as Yang Shui, and Wu Kuang, who were all the way over at the Primordial Heaven Source Grand Restriction, had all come together. This was the heritage accumulated by the human race over thousands of years. It was not very strong and very much lacking when compared to them at their peak, but this was a sign of hope for the rise of the human race. The fierce battle stopped at some point. The 8 Ninth Order Masters circulated their auras to suppress and seal this zone to ensure that regardless of where their opponents tried to escape from, they would be met with a fierce flurry of attacks. However, they were in no hurry to attack. The humans may occupy the absolute upper hand on the surface, but the slightest mistake in a fight of this level could bring about dire consequences. Both sides were constantly probing each other, looking for a breakthrough point. "You're not running away." Mi Jingluan gave Mo Nayi a strange look before the Ninth Order Masters gathered and turned to surround them. This group had taken every opportunity to escape, but clearly Mo Nayi showed no such initiative and allowed the humans to encircle them, which puzzled Mi Jingluan. Run away? Where? Mo Nayi answered his question with another question as he looked askance at him. Even though he knew that he was on the weaker side right now, his attitude remained firm. Mi Jingluan did not answer. Mo Nayi went on. "There's something that I can't understand, so I will appreciate it if Supreme Commander Mi can explain it to me." On the battlefield, Yang Kai's aura was constantly appearing and disappearing, and every time that happened, a number of pseudo-royal lords would face unfortunate ends. Mo Nayi's team was restrained, yet Yang Kai could freely go on a slaughter spree. From the human's perspective, stalling for some time seemed to be a good idea. That way, Yang Kai could better weaken the Black Ink clan's side. Thus, Mi Jingluan obliged. "So there exists something that puzzles you in this world." These words were not just meant to ridicule. As the supreme commanders of their respective sides, the fight between Mi Jingluan and Mo Nayi was not just something that played out over the past year or two. Both of them had a thorough understanding of each other, putting aside where they stand and seeing him merely as an opponent. Mi Jingluan thought highly of Mo Nayi in that regard. Mo Nayi did not answer his question. Instead, he asked what he had on his mind. "How did you find out?" "Find what out?" Mi Jingluan answered casually, while putting on a confused look at the right moment. Mo Nayi kept a firm gaze on him. "Even though you are able to conceal it well, Supreme Commander Mi, Brother Ouyang here is not as good at pretending. So why ask me that question when you already know the answer?" Next to them, Ouyang Lai bristled. "What did I do? If you want to talk, just talk. Why drag me into it?" Ouyang Lai was displeased. Mo Nayi turned to look at him. "Your expression changed when I was asking my question earlier. That proves you know what I'm talking about. Am I not allowed to be nervous during such a critical moment?" Ouyang Lai roared. Mo Nayi could not be bothered to answer, so he turned back to Mi Jingluan. "Over the years, the human race's attacks on the no-return pass have maintained the same frequency, but this time, your attack happened far before the expected time. Moreover, Brother Yang has ignored us so openly. He could have saved those Eighth Order masters, yet he continued culling our pseudo-royal lords instead. Even though you can clearly achieve the same goal with minimal cost if you had spent a dozen years more, you chose the risky method instead. It's as if you're all in a hurry to reclaim the no-return pass. Meanwhile, everything that was said was just flying over the heads of Dia Luo and the many pseudo-royal lords. None of them had any idea what Mo Na was talking about. All they knew was that things were likely to be disastrous this time. The Black Ink clan had 2 royal lords and a dozen pseudo-royal lords in this group, but the humans had 8 Ninth Order masters. In terms of true strength, the Black Ink clan was at a complete disadvantage. They were curious to know the answer to Mi Jing Luan's earlier question. Why didn't they run away when they could have? As a result, they were now surrounded in this place. Each one of them was feeling uneasy about the situation, and it was inevitable that a sense of dissatisfaction arose against Mo Na. Why is that? Mo Na spoke, but he did not mean it as a question. He answered, there's only one possibility, and it is that you humans have found out about it. That's why you're in a hurry to end the battle at the no-return pass, and you'd rather pay a heavy price now to make that happen. Am I right, Supreme Commander Mi? Mi Jingluan shook his head. I don't know what you're talking about. Mo Na sighed. So be it. If Supreme Commander Mi does not wish to answer, then I will refrain from asking. This should be the deciding battle, right? I admit this came as quite a surprise, and our side is not prepared yet, but it seems you are not either. Heh! Who would have thought that this battle would end up this way? But Supreme Commander Mi, even though my Black Ink clan is in decline right now, claiming the no-return pass won't be that easy. I hope that the losses incurred on your side are within your comfort zone at the end of this battle. Oh, Yang Lai was impatient. What are you blabbering on for? Your funeral is already here. Mo Na turned to him with an icy look in his eyes. The casual look from before was gone, and he spoke in a stern voice. Are you really so sure that you've defeated me? Almost at the same time as those words were spoken, dozens of powerful auras that shook the void rose up within the no-return pass and swept out. It was the pseudo-royal lords who had remained in the no-return pass, all this while guarding the high-rank Black Ink nests. These pseudo-royal lords had been stationed in the no-return pass since the humans began attacking it, but there was no helping it. It was mainly because they had to guard against the annoying Yang Kai. This fiend was constantly appearing out of nowhere, always coming out of the barren territory every battle. Without these pseudo-royal lords to protect the Black Ink nests, Yang Kai would long have destroyed them all. And without them, the Black Ink clan will have no way to replenish their forces or heal from their injuries. And during Yang Kai's repeated fights with the pseudo-royal lord team, led by Dia Luo, it was they who fended against the fallout from their battle to keep the high-rank Black Ink nests safe. These pseudo-royal lords had never left the no-return pass since the humans began their attack. However, all of them had left at this moment without a single one remaining behind. Without their protection, the no-return pass was practically defenseless at this moment. Even though there were still 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods standing on either side of the no-return pass, if Yang Kai had wanted to, he could easily take advantage of this opportunity to charge in and destroy all the Black Ink nests. If the 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods were to attack him at that point, it would only speed up the destruction of the Black Ink nests. Noticing the unusual movement from the no-return pass, the Ninth Order masters all looked astonished. Mo Na grinned at Mi Jingluan. Since it's the final battle, I won't be standing on ceremony. The humans were willing to pay a huge price if it meant taking the no-return pass. So how could the Black Ink clan hold back? If this battle was lost, would there still be any Black Ink nests left? In such a situation, there was no longer any need to guard the no-return pass. In a fight with their lives on the line, the winner would be the king, and the loser would be the villain. Kill! Mo Na suddenly shouted as he led his team towards Wei Junyang. which caught the latter off guard. Even with the other Ninth Order Masters responding promptly, he was still immediately forced back. Like Xiangshan, Wei Junyang was also wounded, and was obviously seen as a breakthrough point by Mo Na Yi, which made him very angry. But fortunately, the Ninth Order Masters were all top masters and soon stabilized the situation. As Mi Jingluan's divine sense surged, 3 of the 8 Ninth Order Masters left to confront the pseudo-royal lords who had come charging out of the No Return Pass, while the remaining 5 teamed up to fight Mo Na Yi and his team in an evenly matched situation. However, how could 3 Ninth Order Masters stop the charge of several dozen pseudo-royal lords? The pseudo-royal lords have formed their own battle formations, and a single 3 Fortunes formation was enough to hold back a single Ninth Order Master. In an instant, the advantage gained from Yang Kai killing off a large number of pseudo-royal lords was leveled, and the damage which the humans were able to stem began to snowball. At that moment, a huge Great Pass entered the battlefield. Pure Yang Pass, which had always remained outside of the conflict zone, finally joined the fight. The huge Great Pass slowly rotated, and the many large artifacts set up on it were constantly releasing rays of light that were as dazzling as a thunder dragon, striking the enemy lines and clearing out large areas of the void with each attack. The Black Ink clan's defense line, which was targeted by Pure Yang Pass, instantly fell into a shaky situation. Martial Peak. Martial Peak, Chapter 5906, Great Sun Explosion. Martial Peak Pure Yang Pass was the only great pass of the human race left. It was currently the command center of their grand army. Its symbolic and strategic significance was greater than its role as a weapon. Other than the first battle for the No Return Pass, where the majestic, impregnable Great Pass battled the Black Ink clan army, it had always stayed outside of the battlefield during the fights happening over the years. It wasn't until now that the Great Pass rushed over, and the lights coming from its various artifacts were released, bombarding indiscriminately into the Black Ink clan's defense line. Its fierce and unceasing attack quickly tore a gap into the defense line, and the Azure Sun army nearby immediately took advantage of the situation to charge in. The masters from the Black Ink clan quickly noticed the situation, and immediately more than a dozen pseudo-royal lords rushed over. At the same time, over 100 figures flew out from Pure Yang Pass to meet them. These were the 8th Order Masters who were responsible for standing by on Pure Yang Pass and maintaining it all this while. 100 8th Order Masters definitely would not be able to stop this number of pseudo-royal lords alone, but they had Pure Yang Pass behind them to act as reliable support. Holding back and delaying their enemies was still something they could manage. The exchange between both sides soon began, and the light of both the secret techniques and artifacts blossomed incessantly. On one side of the huge battlefield, the front of the Burning Moon Army was in charge of. Both sides were constantly exchanging blows. However, the Burning Moon Army were unable to break through the tight defense line of their opponent from beginning to end, so it did not matter how intense the fight became. Only by ripping a gap in that tight line of defense could the humans gain some ground and charge in and slaughter more of their enemy. In the fierce exchange, the Black Ink clan managed to repel the attacking humans time and time again, and both sides were suffering great casualties. At a certain point, the Black Ink clan on this front suddenly noticed that the human race's attack had inexplicably become much weaker, and while they were confused, they saw the dense forces of the human race army suddenly split up, moving to the left and right, while a dozen warships that were clearly different from the usual ones came forward. Moreover, there was a giant warship following right behind them, a purifying Black Ink battleship. The masters from the Black Ink clan on this front instantly recognized the warship as one of the purifying Black Ink battleships created by the humans. Their eyes showed puzzlement, at this move, as they had never seen a purifying black ink battleship on the front lines of a battlefield in all the times they battled each other. After all, this warship itself was not meant for charging into battles. It was a support craft used as a fallback point. What was the purpose of the humans bringing in this purifying black ink battleship? The next moment, those from the Black Ink clan seemed to have thought of something, and a look of great horror emerged on their faces. Divine sense surging, as someone roared, "Don't let them get close! Sink them!" A heavy barrage of attacks that covered the sky rained down on the warships, and even though the defensive arrays of the dozen warships in front of the purifying black ink battleship were activated to their limits, they were still destroyed in a very short time, with the warships being blasted to pieces as well, alongside the members of their squads. Even more attacks came towards the purifying black ink battleship. The defensive arrays glowed brightly, but it quickly dimmed down and was shattered. In the next moment, the massive purifying black ink battleship was also completely destroyed. However, there was no hint of joy in the face of those from the Black Ink clan, especially from the one who was commanding the battle. Instead, he appeared greatly shocked and hurried to pull back almost as soon as the purifying black ink battleship exploded. Like a great sun shining in all directions, the purifying black ink battleship exploded, its dazzling light illuminating the void like daylight. The light gradually dissipated, and a large circular area in the battlefield, which was originally filled with black ink strength, was now presented clearly in everyone's vision. All of the black ink strength there had been purified, and the Black Ink clansmen struck by the light were all howling in pain. Some of the weaker ones had even died on the spot. Even those who quickly retreated earlier still failed to escape being struck by the purifying light in the end, and now the rich black ink strength their bodies was leaking out uncontrollably, as if they had been tossed into a wok of hot oil. The pain was so intense that their expressions became distorted. Even more to their horror was the fact that their strength was dropping sharply as their black ink strength leaked out. When the Black Ink clan commander turned his head and looked back, he saw the human race's army charging in, and his heart went cold. He knew that this defense line was as good as gone. The same scene of a great sun exploding was playing out in every corner of the battlefield. The continuous bursts of light were the greatest nightmare of all Black Ink clansmen. This was the final battle to conquer the No Return Pass. Even ye dared to go all in on this fight. So, as the attackers, how could the humans not rise to meet the occasion? As soon as Mi Jingluan gave the order to attack the No Return Pass, a secret directive was sent out to every army. Use the purifying light sealed in the purifying black ink battleships to force open the Black Ink clan's defense line. The humans had many purifying black ink battleships in their arsenal, with each division having at least one of its own. The total number of such warships they had with purifying light sealed in them had already exceeded 1,000. The Black Ink clan's defense was indeed solid. Even if the humans could break through it with a forceful attack, they would still have to pay a heavy price. But with the purifying black ink battleships leading the way, the casualties incurred by the humans could be greatly reduced. The soldiers were gone if they died, but they could produce more purifying black ink battleships if they were destroyed. There was no way Mi Jingluan couldn't recognize such a simple thing. This was a tactic that he had thought of long ago, but he would not use it simply before his hand was forced. Building 1,000 purifying black ink battleships was not exactly an easy task. However, if they wanted to launch an attack on the No Return Pass when they had not made full preparations, this was the only method they could employ. Over 1,000 purifying black ink battleships exploded in less than a half cup of tea's time, each one purifying a vast area. No matter how strong the Black Ink clan's defenses were, they were helpless against this power that perfectly restrained them. The once tight defense line was now filled with wide gaps, and the various armies of the humans, who had long been preparing for this moment, rushed forward at the opportune moment. They fortified their positions, increased their troops, expanded their advantage, and slaughtered their enemies. In less than half an hour, the Black Ink clan was in clear decline. It was practically a miracle that they were able to achieve such immense results in such a vast battlefield. And within only a short time, but time was running out for the humans now. The explosion of such a large number of purifying Black Ink battleships meant that the humans can no longer rely on the purifying light sealed within those battleships to disperse Black Ink strength that invaded their bodies. Now, the soldiers could only rely on the purifying Black Ink pills they brought in advance to protect their small universes. But the purifying Black Ink pills had limited medicinal efficacies, so this battle had to be fought and won quickly. Many factors could affect the outcome in war, including the determination of the soldiers on both sides and the strength of their forces. However, the most significant determining factor was still the top masters of both sides, the giant spirit gods and Black Ink giant spirit gods. Even if the humans could wipe out the Black Ink clan army entirely, it would be useless if they could not take down the Black Ink giant spirit gods. A creation of Mo was a threat to the humans that the pseudo-royal lords could not compare with. Yong Kai continued his endless slaughter on the battlefield, his figure swift and elusive. Everywhere he passed, the auras of pseudo-royal lords vanished. Since the start of the battle, as many as 30 pseudo-royal lords had already died at his hands. This was the battle where he killed the most pseudo-royal lords. The high-intensity battle left his body covered in blood and his aura unstable. The final struggle made by the pseudo-royal lords before their deaths was not something that could be ignored. However, his efforts were able to reduce the casualties for his people by a great margin. Mo Na Yi burned all bridges when he realized that this was going to be the final, decisive fight, commanding all the pseudo-royal lords standing by at the no-return pass to come out as well, completely giving up on defending the no-return pass. Despite how many Eighth Order Masters the humans had, they were still somewhat powerless when faced with these groups of pseudo-royal lords in battle formations. Many Eighth Order Masters suffered miserable fates under their hands. However, as Yong Kai continued to slaughter the pseudo-royal lords, the situation finally took a turn for the better. At this moment, the Eighth Order Masters also gradually stabilized their positions, got into their own battle formations, divided their opponents, and clashed with the pseudo-royal lords. And with Yong Kai continuing his hunt, the humans could slowly gain an advantage when it came to top combat power. However, Yong Kai was not satisfied because the two Black Ink giant spirit gods had not made a single move from beginning to end. They were still just guarding the no-return pass. If the Black Ink giant spirit gods did not make a move, Yong Kai did not dare to reveal his true strength either. If they continued fighting like this, their casualties would continue to increase. And even if they captured the no-return pass in the end, it would be difficult to make the cost of the fallen masters worth it. Fortunately, after the total collapse of the Black Ink clan's defense line and further expansion of casualties, the two Black Ink giant spirit gods who had been standing by finally could not sit still any longer. A deep sigh seemed to come from the void, causing every living being on the battlefield to tremble. Immediately afterwards, the two enormous creatures guarding the left and right sides of the no-return pass moved. They each arrived at the forefront of the battlefield with just a single step, and with a casual wave of their hands, both humans and Black Ink clansmen were silently reduced to paste. It was not that they didn't want to avoid Black Ink clan members, but their bodies were simply too large. Once they launched their attacks, the area it passed through was too wide to achieve precise control. In an instant, both the human race and Black Ink clan armies scattered wherever the two Black Ink giant spirit gods went. At the same time, in the barren territory, and Air, who had been paying attention to the situation here, became excited. Pointed to the territory gate. "Do we go now?" Air stood up and quickly nodded, and before leaving, their little friend had told them that if those two big guys dared to move, they should rush in. Previously, those two big guys had been remaining motionless, so Ada and Air could only stare at them. Now, it was undoubtedly time for them to descend the mountain. Beat them up. Da's face was full of killing intent. After his declaration, he took a deep breath and suddenly shrunk his towering and massive body, transforming into a small giant. Next to him, Air did the same. Within 10 breaths of the two black ink giant spirit gods taking action, the two giant spirit gods stepped out of the territory gate connecting the barren territory and the black ink battlefield. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5907. Chants Marshall Peak after the giant spirit gods, shrunken to the size of small giants, stepped out of the territory gate. Their body expanded rapidly back to their original size. Then they charged and crashed thunderously into the no-return pass. The massive, remnant great passes shook, and the aftershocks swept out in all directions. The black ink nests, which the black ink clan had been carefully tending to all these years, instantly shattered into dust. If this scene had occurred a few days ago, it would have undoubtedly been a great heartache to the black ink clan, but at this moment, none of them had the heart to care about such things anymore. The black ink clan had brought out all their strength, and the entire no-return pass had become an empty shell. This battle was the one to decide the life or death of the black ink clan in the no-return pass. If they won, they could continue to survive, but if they lost, everything would end for them. So who would still care about the black ink nests? The two giant spirit gods raised their feet and started running through the no-return pass. However, it only took 2 or 3 steps before they reached the battlefield, where they flew straight towards the two black ink giant spirit gods. The black ink clan army that tried to stop them suffered catastrophic losses, and the defense line that they were able to maintain through grueling effort was smashed apart by Ada and Aer, creating 2 unimpeded passageways right to the heart of their lines. Countless casualties occurred in an instant. The black ink giant spirit gods, who were in the midst of mercilessly slaughtering the humans, naturally noticed the situation. They immediately assumed defensive positions, but in the next moment, they were each hit squarely by Ada and Aer and tumbled over with them. Tackled his opponent's waist and swung his fist fiercely. His opponent was also unwilling to appear weak and smashed down with his elbow, fiercely hammering Da's back. He even grabbed Da's neck with his other arm and squeezed tight, as if he were trying to twist Da's head off. The battle between the two giant spirit gods was extremely simple and crude, making it look almost like 2 children fighting, but every one of their strikes caused space to shake and become unstable. Terrifying shockwaves that were visible to the naked eye rippled out in all directions. All living beings nearby, regardless of whether they were human or black ink clan, ran and cleared a space large enough for these behemoths to fight. Even though Air's side was not as explosive, it was still extremely rough. He and his opponent exchanged punches, each first reaching the other's body, causing both sides to stumble. These two were old rivals who had fought for thousands of years in the barren territory, but neither had ever defeated the other. This battle was simply a continuation of their previous struggle. If nothing out of the ordinary happened, it was unlikely that there would be a clear winner in the fights between the giant spirit gods. The masters from either side could not interfere with a fight of this level. More than that, simply being caught in between these 4 would have dire consequences. Only Yong Kai waited in the shadows as he watched on from the sidelines, waiting for the right moment to strike. The black ink giant spirit gods were finally moving something which he had been eagerly anticipating. And Air also arrived promptly to restrain them, so there was no need to worry about them posing a threat to the human race army. Now, all Yong-kai had to do was look for a suitable opportunity to strike. However, when this opportunity would rear its head, or if it would even arise to begin with, was uncertain. Even though Yong-kai had carefully instructed Ada and Air beforehand, giant spirit gods were simple-minded, so there was no guarantee they would do as they were asked. Rather than getting between the giant spirit gods' fight, Yong-kai continued to roam the battlefield while keeping an eye on them. With Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, the pseudo-royal lords could hardly even sense his presence before he launched an attack on them. By the time they did notice, danger was already upon their heads. After reaching this point in the battle, Yong-kai was not content to just kill pseudo-royal lords. If the opportunity presented itself, territory lords were not spared either. Several dozen pseudo-royal lords had died at his hand, and there were likely more than 1,000 territory lords dead, even as a conservative estimate. And that was because they were killed merely out of convenience. Yong-kai hadn't deliberately targeted them. Thanks to the gap in the defenses created by Ada and Air's charge, the Wolf Fong Army and Twin Instrument Army had already breached the Black Ink Clan's main forces. The two human armies cooperated smoothly as they constantly expanded the gap in the defense line. Although the Black Ink Clan tried their best to retreat and regroup, they were unable to do so. Victory seemed to be within grasping range for the human race. In this chaotic and brutal battlefield, despite the constant reaping of lives, the soldiers did not stop throwing themselves in. To Yong-kai's surprise, the opportunity he was waiting for came quickly. From the battlefield, a roar suddenly erupted. It was Da's shout mixed with a hint of excitement. "Little friend, come quick. I've got him." Almost at the same time he shouted these words, Yong-kai, who had been keeping an eye on their movements, had already arrived at Da's side. At this moment, Da had managed to pin his opponent in the void. Da's arms had constricted one of his opponent's arms, stopping it from moving. His legs were also like ropes, wrapped around one of his opponent's thighs. In this posture, two of the opponent's limbs were completely immobilized and unable to break free. However, this situation was extremely unfavorable for Da because in order to tightly restrain his opponent, all four of his limbs were tied up, whereas his opponent still had one arm and one leg free for his use. When Yong-kai arrived, the Black Ink giant spirit god was punching and kicking viciously. The force of each attack sent shockwaves through Da's body, and rubble-like pieces were constantly smashed from his body, each piece the size of an ordinary city. Since he had been keeping a close eye on the four giant spirit gods, Yong-kai witnessed everything clearly. After Da rushed out of the barren territory, he directly grappled his opponent and went all out to restrain him. After some wrestling, they finally reached the current situation. This was something he had repeatedly instructed Ada and Air on before the battle. No matter what, they had to find a way to restrain the Black Ink giant spirit gods. Yong-kai originally thought that Air would do a better job at this, since Air had clearly shown more intelligence than Da throughout the many years of Yong-kai knowing them. Therefore, when Yong-kai instructed them on this matter, he focused more on Air, and also placed his hopes on him. But in fact, it was Da who achieved it first. This was something Yong-kai did not expect, but it still made some sense when he thought about it. Due to his lower intelligence, his thoughts were simpler, so he just did everything within his power to do what he was told. It was not the first time that a giant spirit god and Black Ink giant spirit god had wrestled like this before. Previously, when Air was fighting his opponent in the barren territory, a similar scene had appeared. Yong-kai had seen them entangled like this many times when he passed by the barren territory. In the end, this struggle had developed into a stalemate. So the black ink giant spirit god did not feel the need to act defensive against Da's actions. After being restrained, it instead rained attacks down on Da as it pleased. Unlike the giant spirit god, which lacked sentience, the black ink giant spirit god was Mo's soul clone with a clear cleverness to it. Da's actions were seen as foolish in its heart, even though it was caught off guard for a moment. The one at a loss here was not itself. That was why it had no fear. That was until Yang Kai suddenly showed up, the black ink giant spirit god, who was punching and kicking Da instantly realized something and stared fiercely at the ant-like figure in front of it. "Well done!" Yang Kai shouted, and instantly opened the portal of his small universe while surging his space principles to the fullest at the same time. Countless residual images appeared at once, as if countless Yang Kais had appeared in that instant. In just a short 3 breaths, the residual images dissipated, and Yang Kai returned to his original position. However, where the residual images were located, stone giants with powerful auras appeared. They were the small stone race, and from the powerful aura that was flowing out of them, each one was comparable to an 8th order master, the black ink giant god, who was being firmly restrained by finally paled at this sight. It had previously eaten a similar loss before when it was restrained by Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing in the barren territory. So, when these small stone races masters appeared, it knew that something terrible was about to happen. But what puzzled it was where Yang Kai had amassed so many powerful small stone race masters from. Not only had Yang Kai taken in a massive army of hundreds of millions of them from the chaotic dead territory, a large number of them were even in the 8th order, even though he gave some 8th-order small stone race masters to the other humans. Their numbers were not many. He had kept most of them for himself. In all these years of war, Yang Kai had never used these 8th-order ones, and that was because they were the trump card he was saving to use against the black ink giant spirit god. He could not easily reveal them. Now, at this moment, that trump card was finally going to be played. As many as 2,000 8th-order small stone race masters suddenly appeared on the battlefield, which shocked all those who were fighting here. All eyes were instantly fixed on this side, and when they realized that the source of the surging aura was from this small stone race army, the human race masters breathed a sigh of relief, while those from the Black Ink clan began panicking, especially Mo Na Yi, who instantly understood Yang Kai's intentions. His pupils shrank in shock. A sharp aura suddenly struck him and left a bone-deep injury on his body. Mi Jingluan lightly waved the feather fan in his hand as Dao's strength surged, instantly engulfing his opponent in his attack. You still have the heart to be distracted at such a critical moment? That's not a good habit to have. Mo Na Yi gritted his teeth while defending against Mi Jingluan's attack. Has he been hiding his trump card just for this very moment? Who knows? Mi Jingluan gave a casual reply, but his attacks grew more and more aggressive. Normally, Mo Na Yi wouldn't suffer much against such attacks, but his mind was distracted at the moment, so his body became covered in wounds in just a short while. Mo Na Yi thought at first that even if they lost this fight, and subsequently the no-return pass, they would still be able to deal a heavy blow to the humans. After all, the Supreme One's soul clones were so powerful that no one could oppose them. Worst comes to worst, they would disappear into the depths of the void and meet up with the reinforcements that were rushing this way. Then they would still be able to stop the human race army. Marshall Peak, you're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories